Hello guys, I'm back from another video, and today we're talking about what if Bell was Genji and Hondo's, reincarnations, or just Genji and Hanzo. So, in the last video we talked about how, after, meanwhile basically, Bell is basically, taking down several monsters in the dungeon and even giving him the name, the One-Man Party. Because, he's mostly, most of the time he rarely, joins any parties. Like, even to the point that he basically avoids them. Because he's not really used to, fighting with friends. Even though he technically worked for a team. And I mean both of their souls, aka, Genji and Hanzo. But recently he decided, nah, I'm not gonna work with the party at all. That is why he was given that moniker. So, and also, because he, rarely, as per se, take off his helmet or show any of his skin thanks to his armor, well, nobody has ever seen his face. Most of the time, people just think that he's, some sort of monster in disguise or something. But some people know about his actual face, like this, okay? So, one day when he was told that he has to go to the, Loki Familia to basically talk to their boss, aka Loki herself, he decided to do it because why not? So after basically arriving there and also several people seeing that it was actually him and thought that he's going to be joining the Loki Familia, not technically, he would basically meet up with Loki herself. Apparently Loki wants him to basically join, her familia, but Izuku would, Bell. God damn it. Start to counter. So, after Bell basically, tells her that he doesn't want to join her familia, she would sigh and decide for him to basically just act as acquaintances. And also maybe somewhat pay him. And I mean pay him as in, a lot of Alice. Like, to the point that it's basically, about to cost her a lot. But the reason why she doesn't really care if, Bella's basically going to take, all of her money because, she sort of became in love with him. Yeah. So, as after a while basically talking, Bell would finally somewhat join the Loki Familia. And Bell would be told that he's going to be paired up with a certain, half-elf. Apparently her name was, Leafia, and apparently, oh boy, her reputation with the other party members of the Loki Familia are not really that good. Apparently she's pretty bad at her job, and so would just be a one-man party. But let's just say, unlike, Belle, she's basically, the opposite. She's basically a bumbling mess and a bit, need of a confidence boost. Like, seriously, she seriously needs to have a confidence boost. So, after meeting her for the first time in a most interesting way by, her basically screaming out saying for help and also, getting out some fire from her clothing because she was fighting against a monster that specifically specializes in, fire. So, after putting her out with, his water bottle nearby, he would basically, look around and basically, tell her that he's gonna be his new teammate. And after realizing that it's actually, Belle Cornell, aka the One-Man Party, she was kind of happy, but also kind of, saddened because, she's basically useless. But Belle is definitely going to be the one that's going to help her with her, confidence problem. And so they were told by Loki that they're going to be having their first mission, which apparently this mission is all about taking down a nearby goblin camp that recently, popped up. And so Belle and also, Leafia would start to leave the Loki Familia mansion and so would start to leave to go to that specific, part of the dungeon. And so, that is basically what happened last episode. And so, let's talk about what happens next. So, Bell is basically wearing his full, armor, which is this, yeah, as he's basically walking around with Leafia. Leafia was a bit intimidated by him because, when she first saw him, she thought that he was pretty much you know, a whole, like, a full, like, league above her. Because, she thinks that Belle is a bit terrifying, and not only that, quite powerful after hearing some of the stories of some adventurers seeing him in action. So, well, she's basically following him, she would say this. So, you're basically my new teammate, right? As Belle would say this. Yeah, so what? As she would say this. Well, I'm pretty thankful for that. As Belle would say this. Why? Are you perhaps happy that I'm your teammate? Just because I'm pretty strong? As she would say this. Yeah, but I'm sort of not really good at my, job. As Izuku would say this. Yeah, so I heard. But don't worry. Try and just do some healing spells on me if I get damaged. That's gonna be your job. Maybe, he would say. As she would say this. Sure, she would say with a meek voice, as they would arrive at the guild, which currently everybody's basically looking at both of them. Some of them, basically whispering to each other, saying, "Is that his party member?" As one of them would say, "Huh, I guessing he's no longer called the one-man party anymore." And one of the girls would say, "Alright, who the hell is this bitch that's basically, stealing away my man?" One of them would fucking say. As one of them would say, is she some sort of like, is she the boyfriend of Belle Cornell over there? One of them would say, as currently, Leafia is a bit, a bit blushing after hearing this, but Izuku would say this. I meant Izuku, I meant Belle, god damn it. Okay. So, Belle would say this. Hey, Leafia, just ignore them. Besides, we're just here for our job. As she would say this. Oh, yeah, sure. She would basically, shuffle right next to him as they would arrive at the receptionist. As not Izuku, I meant Belle, goddamn. No, not again. Anyway, so, Belle would say this to the receptionist. So, I heard that there's this problem with some goblins. As she would say this. Oh, yeah. Are you here to take care of this, Mr. Belle Cornell? As Belle would say this. Yeah. As she would say this. Oh, sure. Right this way. And so, he would be brought towards the dungeon, and so both of them would start going into the dungeon to fight this threat. So, after arriving at the dungeon, Belle would see, a few scattered, bodies, mostly from adventurers that got attacked by the goblins. As Belle is basically, getting ready his bow and arrows, as Leafia would basically say, "Hey, Belle, what should I do exactly? I mean, you did say that I'm going to be your healer, but..." As Belle would say this, "Shh, shut up." As he would basically point at the little area, seeing a few goblins basically, basically circling someone. And that someone was another monster. And they seemed to be more coordinated than usual. As Belle would say this. This is weird. Most goblins, or at least most monsters, prefer to just be alone and don't work in packs, but for some odd reason, these goblins seem to be working with each other. Pretty well, in fact. As Leafia would say this. I mean, that's a bit weird. I mean, most of the times, goblins mostly just did it for their own benefits. But it seems that they're working pretty well. As Belle would say this. Yeah. As Belle would start to think. As Belle would say, "Alright, just get ready." As she would say this. Get ready for what? As Belle would basically, grab his arrow, and he would basically shoot one arrow at one of the goblins, stabbing one of them in the head, causing them to basically look back and see, nobody. And they would start to look around, basically on their guards, thinking that there's some sort of, intruder. As Belle would say this. Now, Leafia, use one of your more offensive spells. As she would say this. Right. As she would start to do an incantation, as she would shoot out a few fireballs. These fireballs would hit, 3 more goblins, as the last goblin is currently running away, trying to get out of there. As Belle would say this. Oh no, you're not. As Belle would basically grab his bow and arrow as he would aim it towards the back of the head of, the goblin. As he would shoot the arrow and it would stab into his, head and basically go through it, causing the end of the arrow or the arrow tip to basically, fully be out of his, forehead, causing it to basically fall down and, causing the arrow to basically come out of his head. Yeah, that's a bit gruesome. As Belle would say this. Now, let's see where they're actually going. Or at least, where that goblin camp is, he would say, as, Leafia would follow. After a while of walking, he would see a few torches and a few, blood splatters. Belle would basically tell Leafia to basically, go onto the ground and basically start, crawling in case of, the goblins catching them. They would find themselves in a large-looking cave system, which, it basically has, a large cave system. It's basically, a large, ravine, and in the bottom was several goblins, and seems to have steps reaching towards the actual goblin settlement, or, camp. After, looking at that, looking at the goblin camp, Belle would say, well, this is certainly interesting, as he would basically tell Leafia or gesture to, Leafia to come a bit closer. She would basically, go towards Belle as she would see the goblins almost seem to be more intelligent. They seem to be working together, and in fact, almost resemble a little village, in fact. As Belle would say this, well, this is a turn of events, he would say, as she would say, this is weird. As Belle would say this, no kidding. So, he would basically look at the, goblins, as one of the goblins seemed to be, working as some sort of, guards. And when Belle looks towards a little, throne, Belle would notice a large-ass ogre that seems to be the one that's in control of this place. As Belle would say this, it seems that we found the actual leader here. As Belle would basically say that, as she would say, so what are we going to do? As Belle would say this, like we always do. As he would basically charge up his arrow, as he would start to use, Hanzo's ult. As he would shoot out the large two twin dragons made from blue energy, as it would shoot towards the, gigantic ass ogre. As the ogre would not notice, basically, eating some, let's just say a large, drumstick. As he's basically eating it, he would notice the large dragons basically coming towards him, as it would stab, his arm and causing the arm to get ripped off, causing his, drumstick to basically, fly off. As he would scream out in pain, as every single goblin there would just notice it. As they would look towards the direction of the arrow that basically, came from, everybody or the, goblins would see Belle and also, Leafia. As Leafia would basically say, what are we supposed to do? As Belle would say this, well, I want you to use your most powerful spell. As she would say this, are you sure? As Belle would say this, yeah, and shoot it in the middle of the city. I heard that your spell is pretty strong. As she would say this, I'm sure. As Belle would say this, I'll keep you cover. As he would basically grab his, katana, as he would see a few goblins coming up the steps, trying to get ready to, get over there to basically kill both Belle and also Leafia. Belle would basically start defending Leafia by using his sword and basically slashing at the, the nearby, wait for a second, god dang, the nearby goblins by using his sword and basically slicing through them like, like a butter knife to, pretty melted butter. As you would basically start slicing through them as, wait for a second, god dang it, Leafia would start doing the incantation as, after a while of basically, chanting, she would shoot out the spell, summoning a wave of fire, basically burning the entire, goblin camp, causing some of the goblins to be incinerated. The ones that survived were the gigantic ass, ogre, which currently his half of his body is basically burnt, and some of the goblins that are basically coming at them. Belle would basically kill almost all of them, some of them even falling to the ground because, the stairs didn't have railings, so yeah. So, the ogre, meanwhile, is basically raging right now and basically grabs his club. And because of his, half-bird body, he would basically fall to the ground in super pain. Everybody would just see the scars on his face as he looks at Belle specifically with rage, as he would basically grab one of the large, stakes on the ground, acting as like a fence or whatever, as he would yeet it like a spear. Belle would see this as he would slice through it with his blade, as Belle would say, "Hey, Leafia," as Leafia would say this, yeah?" As he would say this, "Do you have a spell to boost my speed, right?" As she would say this, yeah, what are you gonna do?" As Belle would say this, as he would basically give off a smile under his mask, as he would say, "Let's just say something interesting." As she would basically do the incantation and makes him a little bit more speedy, as Belle would charge towards the goblin, I meant the ogre, as the ogre would start to clash with him. Seeing this, she would say, "What the..." As Belle is basically fighting against the large ogre, currently still, holding his club and basically started trying to, squash him. Belle is basically dancing through the, attacks while evading the flames with graceful, movements. Belle would even slice through the flames and basically causing them to, disappear. As Belle would basically, charge towards him as he would basically does Genji's ult, causing a large green dragon to burst forth and basically not really crushing, more like, charging towards the chest of the large ogre. The ogre would be slammed into the wall as Belle would say this. That was easy. As Belle would basically grab his sword as he would slice off the head of the ogre, causing it to turn into dust and summoning forth the monster core. After grabbing the monster core, he would basically start to, get out of there using the enhanced speed thanks to the help of Leafia. So, after grabbing onto the cliffside, he would say, "Hey, meet a hand." As she would say, "Oh, yeah, here." She would basically grab Belle's hand as Belle would basically, wait for a second, get out of the, cliff and basically standing over the burning, goblin camp. As he would say this, "Well, that was awesome," he would say, as she would say this, "Well, that's certainly an understatement," as Belle would say this, "Anyway, so, let's go," as she would say this, "Oh, right," so, they would basically start to leave as Belle is basically, going through the, wait for a second, god dang it. So, after arriving back at the guild, which everybody would start looking at, Belle once again, as Belle would say this. Defeated all of them. And it was quite interesting, in fact. After also reporting about the whole, goblins actually working together, and also the whole, ogre that's basically, commanding them. Let's just say the adventurers nearby, hearing this, well, they're kind of, afraid of it. Including some of the, receptionists nearby, including the receptionist that he was talking to. As she would say, I'll just, as Belle would say this, yeah, I'm gonna be leaving now. Come on, let's go, Leafia. As she would say this, "Oh, yeah, let's go." So, after, coming with him, he would basically start leaving, going towards the Loki Familia mansion. Wait for a second. So, after arriving back at the Loki Familia mansion, he would see a few people just did it? As everybody's basically, looking back at, Belle, as Belle would say this. What? As one of them would say, "Did you, have any trouble with her?" As Belle would say this. "Not at all. She seems a bit useful." As everybody would start looking back at, Leafia, she would say, what? As they would look back at Belle, as Belle would just say, do you really think that she's that useless? I mean, she basically helped me. As everybody would start looking at her, as one of them would say, are you sure she didn't bribe you by anything? Or as Belle would just say, anyway, as Belle would basically, take her hand, as she would start to blush a little bit after, the contact, as Bella will basically, bring her towards the office of Loki. After, knocking on the door would basically open and notice a few people there. Mostly the main, the more prominent characters in the Loki Familia. Like, for example, Rivia, Finn, things of that sort. As Bet would just look over and see Belle, as he would say, alright, what the hell are you doing here? As Belle would say this, hold up, I'm not here to fight or anything. I'm just here because, the job is done. As, Loki would say this, wonderful. She would basically say, as she would basically look back at Leafia, as she would say, did she do any trouble? Or as Belle would say this, no, in fact she was pretty useful. As, one of them would say this, specifically Bet. Sure, if pigs can fly, I can definitely don't want to, hear that, bullshit. He would basically say that he, doesn't believe it, as Belle would say this. Alright, dog. As he would say this. What did you say? As Belle would say this. Like I said, she was pretty useful during that little, quest, or that mission. As she would say this. Wonderful. So, do you have any information about what happened? As Belle would basically talk about how the, goblins were actually working together with this ogre, one of them would start to pale. Actually, all of them would start to pale hearing this. As, Loki would say this. So, did you report this to the guild? As Belle would say this. Yeah, obviously. This is definitely a weird development. As, Loki would say this. Yeah, agreed. So, Belle, are you gonna go home? Or as Belle would say this. Yeah, I'm just gonna go home and just get some rest. As one of them would say this, specifically Finn. Hey, Belle, if you want to, we can, go to the tavern, maybe. As Belle would say this. You want to eat with me? As he would say this. Yeah, all of us. As one of them would say this, specifically, one specifically, Tione. Yeah, I mean, we're basically teammates, so as Belle would say this. Fine, I guess. As all of them would basically start, a little bit, they would start to smile, except for, Bet, for obvious fucking reasons. As Bet would say, fine. He would basically, be a little bit angry, and so they would start to arrive at their destination. More specifically, to the actual, wait for a second, god dang it, there's something. To the hostess of fertility. After arriving there, they're basically, ordering their food, and so they would start to eat. As Belle is basically eating with everybody, one of them would say this, specifically Tione. Hey, Belle, are you going to take off your mask? As Belle would say this. Yeah, obviously. Some adventurers would basically perk up at this because, nobody has ever seen his actual face. Mostly adventurers most of the time. So, after Belle takes off his helmet, everybody would see that he's, that his white hair is basically, pretty nice, but most of the girls were blushing at the face. His face was almost similar to, just imagine Sung Jin Woo from, Solo Leveling, but, a little bit more younger. Most of the girls would basically start to blush, as one of them would think in their minds, some of them would think in their minds, well, that is certainly unexpected, as one of them specifically, a certain, goddess, aka, Loki, which she decided to come with them, or more specifically, sneak around so he can, so she can, spy on, Belle and also the rest of her, familia. And after seeing Belle's face, she would say, yep, made the great choice, as she would start to nosebleed after seeing his face, as Belle would say this. Anyway, let's start to eat. As Belle would start to eat, as everybody would just, just leave it that there and basically start to eat, as Beth would start to antagonize Belle by, trying to start a fight with him, but Belle would mostly ignore some of those, insults. But when Belle hears about, Beth, basically, telling Belle that he was lying, that, Levia did anything good, but let's just say Belle did some horrible things to him. And what do I mean by this? Well, by yeeting him off the, yeeting him and basically causing him to break the window, and basically, punching him several times to the point that his face was basically unrecognizable anymore. So, yeah, after doing that, Belle would basically arrive back at the, Loki Familia household, as Belle would say goodbye to them, and so would basically go home at his apartment, and so would basically fall asleep. After a good day. Sorry about that. But not before basically feeding his, bird, because it was a good bird, obviously, and so he would basically fully go to sleep. So yeah, so this is going to be this is actually a pretty short episode today, but I think the reason why is because, tomorrow, or at least the day after tomorrow, is going to be, school again. So yeah, so I hope you liked the video, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye-bye!